Good afternoon, everybody. We will begin the webinar in about 2 minutes, so just hang tight and we will all be back shortly. If you have any questions or concerns, please type them in the chat box and I will respond as I can. Good afternoon. I think we're about to get started. I'm going to make sure that our presenters are unmuted. My name is Beth Herman with the Department of Public Instruction, and I'm very excited that you chose to join us today for our second webinar in the evidence-based practices for SEL series that we're offering this month. Just a few things about what we're doing. This is your opportunity to learn more about evidence-based programs that are available so that you and your communities can make the best choice about what fits in terms of choosing an evidence-based program. At the end, we will take questions. If you do have some during the webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat box. I will monitor those and make sure that we get them to the presenters when we have a time at the end for the questions. This will be recorded, so if you have colleagues who are not able to join you but you want to share this, or you hear about this program and you want to make sure other people know about it, it will be on the website as soon as we can get it closed captioned, and it will be where the alignment tool for 7 Mindsets is located on the alignment webpage. I will put the link to that web page in the chat box once we get rolling. The 7 Mindsets alignment tool was just uploaded this week, so make sure that you check that out. And then you can see how this program aligns with the Wisconsin SEL competencies. We will also be able to provide you with contacts of other educators using the program. So once you're done, if you're interested in speaking to somebody who's using it, please let me know and we will get you a contact. One of the treats today, though, is that you're actually going to hear from an educator who is using the program to give you that perspective as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Barb and Roberto and Elisa to introduce themselves and get the ball rolling. And thank you, folks. I will be here in the background.
Thank you, Beth, for this opportunity to connect and to present to this community of educators in my home state of Wisconsin. Again, my name is Roberto Rivera. I am the Chief Empowerment Officer of the 7 Mindsets organization. We are an organization that creates social emotional learning tools and training, and we facilitate engaging educators all over the nation and all over the world. And so I have with me some amazing folks. We're going to be talking a little bit about our approach and our portal, and Barb Maimone is going to be going into some depth on that.
Hello, hello.
Happy to have a wonderful educator in our movement, Miss Elisa Harrison, joining us from the wonderful state of Wyoming in the town of Lander. So she's going to talk a little bit about her experience with 7 Mindsets. And so to give a little context, I wear a few different hats beyond just being the Chief Empowerment Officer. I'm also partner and a researcher with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And I remember I came across 7 Mindsets when I was charged by CASEL to examine some of the top youth empowerment, youth voice phenomenons happening all over the nation. So we found some remarkable stuff happening in New York, some amazing things happening in Oakland, Chicago. You can check out a lot of these articles at casel.org/youth-voice. And one of the phenomena that we heard about was this movement that was happening in Fargo, North Dakota. And a young lady named Stephanie Johnson, who had come out of a youth international conference called the Ultimate Life Summit. And so this is a summit that's sponsored by the Seven Mindsets that brings young people together from 30 different countries. So Stephanie Johnson came out of that conference back to her home in Fargo, completely impassioned about what she had learned about the Seven Mindsets. And she had a vision. And her vision was that she wanted every young person in her community to experience the Seven Mindsets as well. And so as a bold young person, she created a proposal, and she didn't go to the smallest funder or the mid-sized funder. She went to the biggest funder in the area, which was the Dakota Medical Foundation. And I remember I was interviewing Pat Traynor, who is the president of the Dakota Medical Foundation. And he told me, he's like, look, someone's coming to us for funding. Typically, they have to do some applications, some interviews. He said, it's at least 6 months before someone can ever meet me and sit down. But because she was a young person with such a clear vision and a huge passion, everybody's like, well, you just got to talk to the man. So, she meets with the president of the Dakota Medical Foundation. And she's like, look, I had this experience that changed my life. And I think it's only fair that every young person in my community has the chance to experience this as well. And so he was totally captivated by her vision and her plan. And he told me, he's like, I've never done this before. On the spot, I told her I would fund this initiative. So needless to say, they did this community information session, sharing the Seven Mindsets, and the district signed on, as well as the YMCA, the parent groups, and they even had a business leader group that also decided to model and live the Seven Mindsets. So they created a committee in Fargo, North Dakota, to make Fargo the best place to raise a family in the nation. And I remember as I was interviewing some different students at the school, they're talking about their passions and their Live to Give projects. And I could tell they're engaged. So I said, well, help me understand. Why does it seem like you guys are engaged with this? This is a program. Like, what's the big deal? And the kid said, no, this is not a program. Like, all the adults in our life are talking about their passion, their dreams. They're, engaged in community service project. So they said, how could we not be engaged when all the adults in our lives are living this, And I remember I turned to my colleague who was helping me to co-author the article, and I said, this is amazing. I said, this is so strange, but I feel like I could work with these people, And at the time I was running a national social emotional learning organization focused on culturally relevant pedagogy and SEL, combined with equity and post-traumatic growth. We were reaching about 30,000 young people at the time across 7 cities, and we were looking for a way to scale. So we ended up merging with the Seven Mindsets in 2017, and we have since been able to reach over 337,000 young people just last year, with the goal of reaching over 3.5 million young people to be just like Stephanie Johnson, to be these agents of change in their schools and in their communities, from K to 12, from urban to rural to suburban, and everywhere in between. So that's kind of a little bit of how I learned about Seven Mindsets with my connection with Castle. I'm going to actually pass the mic over to Barb Maimon, who's going to give you a little bit more detail on the approach, give you some idea of some of the lessons, and we're going to hear from our esteemed colleague in the field, Elisa, as well. So Barb.
Yeah, thanks, Roberto. Thank you so much. And you guys, I just want to thank you for your time today, but more importantly, congratulate you on taking the time to learn more about social emotional learning, to have the interest to bring it to your staff and students, because you really are ahead of the game. And as a mother of 2 young children, I've got 2 teenagers myself, there is a need for this in the schools. And I just feel so lucky to be part of a company that really is working every day to try to transform lives of both educators and students and really create a positive, happy place for kids to learn and grow. So with that, I kind of just want to share with you a little bit about why I feel so grateful for what we're doing. And I thought it would be best to show you, whenever I go, and I'm the luckiest person in the world in that I get to visit schools on a regular basis, and I get to see what's going on in the different environments. And I'm fortunate in that I get to work with you guys out there in Wisconsin, so super excited about that. But these were 2 shots from some teacher enrichment days, and we don't even call them teacher PD anymore, because it's so much more than that. It's an empowering, enriching experience where the teachers can get connected with their own social emotional competencies, and through the lens of the 7 mindsets, be able to open up their own growth so that they can, from there, take it to their children in the schools. With the common language of the 7 mindsets, and we will go into that in a minute, and I'll share with you what the 7 mindsets are, but that common language allows the schools to just run and grow and reinforce the language on a regular basis. So you'll see them going crazy at the schools. A lot of these murals that I've indicated here have been painted by the children themselves, the teachers, parents coming in, so really a way to just kind of expand and grow beyond the classroom. And another thing that gets me super excited when I go out to the schools is learning that they've got initiatives going on. A lot of schools have already tried, and district level have had district level initiatives to try to do some positive things for the children, such as PBIS and other initiatives. And what I love about the way that we can help you is that we really help to create the foundation through which all other initiatives can flow. And, for example, with PBIS, being able to teach the children the learning behind the behavior, not just why that behavior is important and rewarding it as such, but really giving them the learning behind it so that when the positive reinforcement may stop, they can continue to exhibit that behavior. And then another thing, this picture was taken at one of our elementary schools, and we talk about youth voice, and a lot of times we're really thinking about middle school and high school children, but these kids, they're called the eye changers, and they were tasked with a leadership role to bring service projects to their community. So they used the words of the 7 mindsets, live to give, and brought all of the other mindsets into play and led groups to do homeless activities and different activities throughout, the world. So these are the things that I think kind of separate us from different approaches that are out there. And one of the things that, over the years of working with schools from all areas and all different situations, we really have kind of narrowed it down to 3 critical components, which leads to sustainable and successful implementation. And really, for us, one of the biggest things that we've learned is that you have to start with the teachers and the staff. Teachers, as you know, are a little bit overwhelmed right now. There's a lot of administrative requirements. Our kids are different with the, introduction of social media and how that has exploded. And it's so important that we don't just train the teachers on how to use our curriculum, but we literally help them with their own personal social emotional growth so that they can honestly bring that to the kids in a vulnerable way. And one of the ways that, one of the things our teachers share with us is that they don't teach the 7 mindsets, they live the 7 mindsets, and then they share them with their students. So teachers first is a big one for us. And with the teacher buy-in, it makes it so much easier for you to bring it to the school and to the classroom. Curriculum is important. We've worked over 10 years in building all of the resources that you'll see in our curriculum. The curriculum was built by educators for educators, and it's meant to be simple, easy to use, and something that they can pick up and go at a moment's notice, because we know that teachers don't always have time built in to plan for new resources and new curriculums. And so we've got to make it something that's engaging, intuitive, but yet is also flexible enough for them to put their own kind of personality into it and give it meaning in life. So we've put a lot of our resources into continuing to refine and build what we think is the best curriculum out there. But like I said first, it doesn't matter how great the curriculum is, if the teachers aren't engaged, it's going to flop. So we try to work those two pieces together. And then the overall framework, how do you present it in an organized, intuitive way that creates a common language, which becomes either the umbrella, of the organization or the school, or even the lens through which everybody's looking at things. So with that, we try to create a community. We've got a Facebook educator page that people from all over the world share their ideas, how they're using the 7 Mindsets approach in their schools. It's an opportunity for them to ask questions. And we have wonderful schools such as Elisa's that are just so anxious and willing to share their stories because they're so passionate about bringing it to others. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Roberto and Elisa Harrison, amazing woman. She works at Pathfinder High School in Lander, Wyoming. And I'm going to turn it over to Roberto to kind of get the conversation started and share her story.
Thank you so much, Barb. So yes, as Barb mentioned, we have a fellow educator in the movement, Elisa Harrison. I was very blessed to be able to go to their school in Lander, Wyoming. What was that, about 9 months ago, beginning of the school year, something like that?
And I would argue with you, Roberto. We are blessed to have you and the program in our school's life. And I'd argue with Barb, I have the best job in the world because I get to see these kids change. So let's bring it.
I love it. I love it. So let's jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your school, Elisa? Are you guys urban? Are you rural? What are the demographics of the school?
We are rural, and it's interesting. We are about 40% minority. Our school boundaries border the reservations, so we have a lot of Native American kids. We're probably 60% low income, but we do have kids from every range. We have a fabulous school. It's a tough school.
Great. And not to mention, you guys are in a new building, which is pretty cool and unique. Help us understand, the last few years, what have been some of the challenges that you all have been facing at Pathfinder High School?
Holy cow. So we had a huge attendance problem. We had a huge disciplinary problem. When we came on, myself and the principal were like, we've got to tackle this. If kids aren't in school, they're not passing classes. But bigger than that, if they don't know how to function in school, they're not going to function in life, right? So we've got to find a program that teaches them just not how to survive right now, but to survive in life in general. It's been interesting. So we signed on to 7 Mindsets, and you came out and did a changing, and this year has been a life-changing year for our students. Our kids are completely different kids from what they were a year ago.
So I appreciate that, and we love hearing the stories, and I'm actually going to be coming out, and we're going to do a documentary film on this phenomenon because I think it's best practice nationally. But help us understand a little bit, why did you decide to go with the 7 Mindsets curriculum? What was so special about it, in your opinion?
It's interesting because we looked at a lot of curriculums, and it's hard to find high school curriculums. But the thing with the 7 Mindsets, it was flexible. We could adapt it to their kids and our kids' needs, and our teachers could run it, and it's something our staff needed to hear. So, it's so interesting because on one of the pictures, you'll see the kids with the My Dream Is. Our kids couldn't dream. Our kids didn't understand what it meant to dream. Our kids didn't understand about passion. And this is life skills. These are skills that our kids needed to know in the classroom, but skills our kids needed to learn to survive in life. And we were so excited because it covers the whole gamut of what Wyoming requires for our social emotional learning also.
Yeah, that's powerful. One of my mentors, Sean Ginwright, he's got this thing. He says, one of the most detrimental impacts of oppression is that it impedes our ability to dream. Just hearing about the experiences of young people on the reservation and all the oppression historically leading up to that moment,
Well,
That's
it's interesting. I had one kid, he's a native kid, and he came in and the first couple weeks he's like, dude, this is for rich white kids. I'm not going to do this. I ain't doing this. Like, and you know, halfway through the year, this kid is now like leading discussions. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we talk about how the lessons are formatted. But he's like, I want to talk. I can do this. Like, and it's changed a whole different mindset for him, all sorts of mindsets for him.
So, I mean, you guys have only been implementing for one school year, right?
Yeah.
What's happened in the last year? I mean, you guys are getting ready to do graduation next week. As you reflect back, what's happened in the last year?
Oh my gosh. Well, we have dealt with our fair share of trauma. We had a death of a former student sibling that's related to a lot of my kids here in the last week. And traditionally, when we've dealt with trauma, the kids get angry and they get angry with each other. And it's really divisive because that's how we operate. You know, that's the only thing they know. And this year they've come together and they're supporting each other and they're loving each other. We've also been we had a teacher that was passionate about amphibians and he gave the kids the tools, the voice, the passion. On the picture, on the other picture up there with all the kids, that's our state representative and our senator and our principal and a couple of our kids. And in their hands, they had the blotched tiger salamander, and our kids actually went to the state legislature, and the state and these kids, not the teachers, our kids were standing on the floor of the Senate testifying, which that doesn't happen unless you're passionate, your connection. These kids wrote the bill, I mean, and went, and it passed, like Google, Wyoming State Amphibian. My kids did that. We did that. It was so great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for so many reasons. I mean, you know, one is that, you know, you have a science teacher who's taking the social emotional learning, you know, who's connecting his passion with young people doing these critical service learning projects and bringing that academic, you know, subject that some kids can be bored with, you know, to life. And they realize, well, wait a minute, science isn't just, you know, old white guys in a book telling you stuff to memorize. Like, science is real life. And, you know, can change your community, can empower people.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to ask Barb, actually, if you can switch to that screen. Yep. 7 different mindsets, pretty obvious. But I'm interested to hear, what is your favorite mindset and why?
Oh my gosh. So, okay, I love every single mindset. Like, it was really hard for me to narrow it down to say one. So I'm going to give you 2 because I can't give you one. So the first one, we are connected, was huge for our kids because they didn't feel connected to anybody. We have our cell phones, we're in them, we're not talking to people, and connections are huge. And that was one of the biggest changes we saw with our kids, was we are connected. And we did an exercise where we had that bulletin board that you saw on the previous screen that every kid got a piece of string, a different color, and there's 35 different things on the board, and they got to connect 7. And they did it privately with me, and it was interesting to see, because they won't let me take the bulletin board now because they still feel connected about where it's at. Wow. So that one is really cool. Yeah, see our bulletin board in the middle, and it really highlighted what's important to these kids. I mean, it's pretty fantastic.
When you talk about connections, just curious, are you talking peer-to-peer, teacher-to-peer, what?
It's all of the above. And We Are Connected is connected student to student, teacher to student, and we have some of the strongest teacher-student connections. We had a girl that had a baby last week, and I went up to visit her, and the first thing she said is, I haven't seen Dr. Woolwine, I haven't seen Mr. Ketton, where's my teachers? Because they have a strong connection. And of course they went up there as soon as they could get up there. And it's also talking about connections in the community. Our kids are learning that, guess what, if I can't do it by myself, I can reach out and talk to people. I can stink and talk to the state legislator, my state representative, and he's going to listen to me. So the connection.
That's amazing.
Everybody,
Have the parents gotten involved at all? Have you shared the language with them?
So it's interesting. We had our parents. So our school, our parents don't like to get involved a lot, but we made our parents, we encouraged them on that. We are living the dream. everything is possible. We put our dream for our kid is, and we took pictures of the kids. And so when we talk about everything is possible, we encourage the parents to dream big with the kids. We have those on a wall of accountability here so the kids can see them and the parents can see them. The other piece that our parents have really stood back and gone, whoa, we're going to switch a little bit. We're going to talk about my very, very favorite mindset, and that's the live to give. There is in the portal a video about Francine Christophe, and she was a French girl in the time of the extermination camps, and she had a piece of chocolate, and she shared that piece of chocolate with a lady that was giving birth in the concentration camp. And it really, my kids were just shocked and how it came full circle back to her 65 years later. And my kids were like, man, she didn't have anything to give. And she gave one piece of chocolate. What can I give? We were hopeful that the kids, we encouraged them, let's come up with a service project, 1 or 2 service projects, right? My kids came up with 19 service projects, student
Oh
led.
my gosh.
These are kids that don't have felt for years they have nothing to give. They have no voice. They have nothing to give. 19 projects. We did over 180 hours worth of service. Let me tell you, the kids, we didn't give them 3 days off of school to do this. We told them before school, after school, during lunch, during your flex time. We can't let you out of classes.
Right.
And they still came up with projects they could do. And it's interesting because when kids feel like they don't have anything to give, it's really devastating to them. And we all know as adults, when we can give, it raises our self-esteem. It makes us feel good. It makes us more productive human beings.
Absolutely.
But when we talk about kids who don't have anything, I mean, so we had one group of kids. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so excited. So we had one group of kids, and we live in Wyoming, and they like to hunt and fish. And these boys are awfully quiet a lot of the time. And they came to me and they said, Miss Harrison, we want to take some kids that need friends fishing. You know, when we were in 4th and 5th grade, it was tough for us. Can you reach out and find some kids to take fishing? And they got the fishing licenses. They gathered the fishing poles. We scheduled a bus. And they took these kids out. They're mentoring these kids and took these kids out on their own will and taught them how to fish. And, you know, next year, the teachers have said, we want to do the live to give earlier in the year because now the kids are wanting to follow up and continue on, and we have 2 weeks of school. The parents are loving it. The parents are calling us up going, what did you do with my kid today? They came home so excited. They said they're raking leaves. They said, you know, and so it's interesting to be able to share that with the parents, and the parents love it. So.
No, I love it. It's powerful on so many levels, you know, and of course, you know, with Castle and us, you know, continuing to do this empirical research. I mean, we've seen middle schools who year 1 were not using any social emotional learning curriculum, you know, have over 300 suspensions, and, you know, they adopt 7 mindsets. Year 2, they have less than 30.
Can I tell you, we have not had one physical altercation this year, not one. And that was one of our major things, is to drop our disciplinary. And I think when we empower kids to make good decisions and give them a voice and teach them that their decisions matter and to be accountable, like, it works. It works. Our attendance has dramatically increased. We went before our school board last week to get funding again, and our numbers are crazy good. They're like, how do we do this? How do we keep this? So
I love that. It reminds me of a quote, you know, young people who are creative are very seldom destructive, you know.
That's right. That's right.
Poems and journals and, you know, creating change in the community, you know, why do they need to, you know, be destructive? So I know that part of Wyoming is similar to here in Wisconsin, is also the sort of mindset of, you know, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and the importance of being trauma informed. My understanding is that you all are also, as a state, making trauma informed processes a priority. How, if at all, does 7 Mindsets connect with the trauma informed process?
Holy cow. So about a month ago, I went to the National Trauma School Conference. And one of the things that they're finding in research is that, you know, when kids experience trauma, it forms neurons and they connect fire negatively. And one of the interventions they're saying is to be grateful. You got to be grateful. You got to rewire this. You got to look for the good in things, which is awesome, because attitude of gratitude is one of the mindsets. And this was really tough for our kids. They were scared to death, like to be grateful. Like this was really tough. So we started out in the first lesson, give me one thing you're grateful for. And they're like, oh man, this is tough.
Yeah.
And so we started doing grateful journals, 5 things every day. And after a week, if they could bring me their journals and 5 different things every day, we're going to have banana splits, right? And so all the kids brought me their journals. They're really excited. They did it. And it was interesting. I asked them, is this hard? Like, and they're like, the first 3 days were tough, but man, this is really good. And they're still, I mean, these are my high trauma kids that were telling me this is hard, and they're doing it, and they're smiling, and it's life changing for them.
I love it. And, you know, in the keynotes that I'm going to do for the SEL conference coming up here in June, you know, I'm going to talk more about post-traumatic growth and some of the research and the capability of going from, you know, pain to propane.
Yeah.
You know that relationships is so key, right? And, and adults being willing to be vulnerable and share their stories, young people sharing their stories, taking action. So I know we're going to get into some of the details here of the curriculum in a moment. But before we transition to showing folks the portal, I'm just curious, how has the staff engaged with the 7 mindsets? What are some of the things that you all have done? Has it just been, you know, doing stuff in the academic subject matter? Has it been just, you know, twice a week? Is there some staff conversation? Help us understand that a little bit more.
So it's great. We meet, I think I said this, we meet as a staff and we do the book study, and then we do the facilitator guide and we talk about it, and we do activities to build our teachers first. And we take care of our teachers first, and then they bring those mindsets into the classroom. I mean, just like our science teachers saying, okay, now we have a state salamander, or now we have a salamander and the state of Wyoming doesn't have one. What are we doing? Our English teachers exploring passions in the reading, in the writing. Our math teachers talking. I mean, the first time you came, we talked about some stereotypical limitations that people put on themselves, like girls can't do math, right? Yeah. Girls can't do science.
Right.
And our math teacher is bringing in and saying, listen, anything's possible. We're constantly breaking down stereotypes. You know, I'm from the res. That's a huge one. People don't get what it's like to be a minority. I mean, and we're breaking that down daily. Our teachers are being connected. You know, it's interesting. We had one student that had really struggled in life, and one of the teachers had connected with him and got talking, and he had never learned how to drum. Drumming's a huge native thing for the boys to do. And we brought in an elder, and they've made connections, you know, and our teacher made that connections. Our teachers are talking to these kids and living it. It's huge.
That is huge, because that's one of the forefronts, you know, that the field is trying to figure out. How do you do social emotional learning in a way that's culturally relevant, you know, that's transformative, not just to the school space, but the community space as well. So some really good insights. What I want to do now is continue the conversation and have Barb kind of lead us a little bit through what are some of the different tools, what are some of the different resources available on the portal. We can kind of talk through that a little bit.
You know, and I think it would be fun to do maybe, and I'll go high level, you know, what's in the portal, but maybe to have Elisa pick out her favorite lesson or one of the lessons that the kids enjoyed the most, and we can go through kind of the feel and flow of a lesson. But to give you guys out there just a brief overview, this is our digital portal, and built into it is all kinds of resources, from parent resources, leadership resources, and our resource hub, which is really like a Google for social emotional learning. A great resource, one of our highly sought after features from our portal. But if you look through it, we've got elementary school courses, middle school courses, high school courses. We've got the hip hop based social emotional learning through Fulfill the Dream, which is just kind of a different flair and feel. And then there's also built-in resources that I think Elisa mentioned in doing the group facilitated professional development for the teachers. There's some courses for teachers and for individual self-study. So for teachers who come in halfway through the year that weren't, you know, fortunate to get Roberto or one of our amazing educators come out to train them on site and can educate themselves through the tools here. But I would love for you to pick, you know, I'd love to show, we'll show high school since that's where you're at, right?
Yeah, so if you click on the down arrow in high school, one thing I want to point out is there's like 4 years worth of lessons here, right?
Right.
So course 1, we're on course 1 because you're on year 1, but next year we're doing course 2. So
Right.
all my kids they're going to be building on the same mindsets every year, but we're going to be approaching it a little bit differently every year. So
Yeah.
let's go to mindset 3.2. We are connected. This one's
Okay, and can I pause you for 1 second, because I want to hear all your detail, but just to show some navigation things too. All of the courses here, there are 7 units, an introduction and a conclusion. So each unit is a mindset. And typically, each unit has 4 different learning objectives or critical components meant to reinforce that mindset. So there's 4 different lessons within each unit. Okay, so yeah, walk me through where you'd like to go in We Are Connected. And I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's go to 3.2, maximize positive relationships. This one's great.
Okay, I am clicking on that. And explain to us too, is it easy to use, hard to use? What are your thoughts in terms of where do you go first once you pull up a lesson?
So I print the lesson plan out,
Right here.
and let's click on that. The lesson plan is laid out and it's very adaptable. So when we look at this, we look at what's going to empower the kids and where they're at and what's going on in life, and we pick it up. So it has the overview, objectives, required materials, SEL alignments. So they're all really critical because we got to show what we're doing and why it does, why we're doing works. And then on the second page, it talks about there's a quote we start out and an icebreaker. This Tag Me icebreaker was fantastic. So I handed the kids sticky notes, right? And you wrote on the sticky notes about things you're really passionate about, and they stuck them to their sleeve. And then they had to go around the room and find people with similar tags, and I made them get their signatures. And one of the funnest experiences is we had a boy who's really into rap, gangster, I mean, he was just tough, right?
Yeah.
And he likes to ride horses. Who knew? He's passionate about riding horses, and he made so many connections. We've taken this icebreaker Tag Me, we've used it in our small group, and we've also taken it into our big group to connect students outside our whole school as a whole.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
the icebreaker is huge. And then I read through it. There's a video in here, but before I got to the video, on the very last page, there's music. There's a song.
Yeah, and
talks about, so let's see. Kind and Generous by Natalie Merchant, right?
Yeah.
So we start each lesson with music. The kids hear it coming down the hall. I have a little Bluetooth speaker that we crank, and we end each one with music. Right. And then when they're journaling, there's usually a journal prompt in there. We play that song and we give them 3 minutes to do their journal prompt. But every lesson has music, and we've created a playlist. My teachers use that playlist in their classrooms if they have free time. And we have a dance party Friday. Every Friday morning, we celebrate that our kids are there, and we use this playlist because it brings back, oh yeah, we talked about this, we talked about that. So,
great.
So I download this, and it's great. And then the slides, we work through and adapt these slides to whatever we need that fits. Like, this is like the best portal. So if you'll click on next, it talks, and you can follow along in the lesson plan, but it talks about a quote. And a lot of times we talk about the quote because the kids are like, I don't get this. We've also printed off all these quotes that introduce our lessons that we talk about, and we've posted them around the school. We've got them taped up everywhere so that they remember them.
That's smart.
And this is the activity that they talked about. Powering Friends. This was interesting. And then there's the video that we loved on this was this digital insanity. And it was really cool. I don't know. Do you want to play it?
Let me play a couple minutes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Network. Facebook to what it is, an anti-social network. Cause while we may have big friend lists, so many of us are friendless all alone. Cause friendships are more broken than the screens on our very phones. We sit at home on our computers measuring self-worth by numbers of followers and likes. Ignoring those who actually love us, it seems we'd rather write an angry post and talk to someone who might actually hug us. Am I bugging? You tell me, cause I asked a friend the other day, let's meet up face to face. They said, all right, what time you wanna Skype? I responded with OMG, SRS, and then a bunch of SMHs, and realized, what about me? Do I not have the patience to have conversation without abbreviation? This is the generation of media overstimulation. Chats have been reduced to snaps. The news is 140 characters.
You get the point. Yeah, that's a great one. I love that one.
So after we watch the video, there's discussion questions. And we start out the year with me or the teachers facilitating these video discussion questions. And about maybe a quarter, halfway through the year, the kids are like, why can't I lead the discussion? Why can't I do this? We're like, absolutely, let's do this. So at this point, my kids are leading the discussions. They're stepping up and talking. And if we have great discussion, this is the great thing about the program is if we have great discussion, we're not journaling that day.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on where the kids are at. Like the portal's flexible. We do it what the kids need. The gallery wall is awesome. We have in their binders, they get to keep working on their art throughout the year. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can skip around in here, so it does not have to be taught in a linear fashion. You can condense it to a shorter time frame if you need to, and you can expand on the lesson. So if you have longer that day, you can go to find additional resources and actually grab any other resource that would be related to that lesson and pin it to the site. So lots of flexibility in there. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's crazy because I have students this year that are asking me, can I teach a lesson next year? Can I run with it? And so we're in the process of like thinking about, okay, how do we do this? How do we get our kids trained? Because if they're empowered enough to lead this, that's the magic.
Absolutely.
And I think just real quick to point it out, you know, the field of social emotional learning in general is really trying to understand, like, how do we engage high school? This is kind of like the final frontier, you know. A lot of SEL providers, you know, are knocking it out the park with elementary. Some are doing okay with middle, but high school, and this is part of the reason why we wanted to demo this and talk to Elisa, is high school folks don't know what to do. There's not a whole lot that's been written in academic research. And I think exactly what I'm hearing coming up over and over again is if we want to engage adolescents with SEL curricula, then we have to put youth voice at the core of everything, right? So quick question to you, Barb, and then maybe we can skip around a little bit.
Sure.
If someone has started one course, I know you said that a lesson is non-linear. Can they skip over to a different course? Like, could someone using a high school course in 7 Mindsets skip over to Fulfill the Dream? Is that allowed in the portal?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. With a digital license, they have access to all courses. And so, you know, they could, you know, some, you know, I've seen some elementary school that have really advanced kids want to pull from the middle school lessons to get some kind of deeper type of videos and vice versa. You know, I've seen some high schools that have pulled from the middle school courses. So you have complete flexibility to customize it to the approach that works best for you.
So as Elisa was, you know, suggesting that, you know, some of the high school students were connecting with elementary school students, she could get into an elementary school course and you could, with some scaffolding and support, maybe teach the high school students, teach that to the elementary school students. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely. You know, and we have a lot of the K-12 schools will do that pretty often. They'll have their upper grades teaching the lessons to their lower grades, and it just creates that sense of leadership. The kids get so much out of it. And of course, the younger kids are so excited to have like a mentor and an older kid. It makes it cool, you know. So absolutely, we've seen that. We've seen high schools that have created 7 Mindsets as a course where the kids get credit for the course and they're actually teaching it to the other high school students. So a lot of creative ways that you can use the course, for sure.
So, real quick, maybe we could just jump in to Fulfill the Dream. I want to make sure we have a few minutes.
Yes, for questions.
I want to get Q&A. I want to have some discussion with the community here, particularly because I'm in Wisconsin. You know, I care about the state being a leader in SEL, and of course I'm elated that we have the state being part of the cross-state initiative. Elisa, I know you guys have been trained in this curriculum as well, and you've been using it. What would you say are one of the most favorite lessons that you've been able to engage your youth with?
The pain to propane was powerful. The pain to propane, it brought kids in because we all deal with pain. The kids, it brought them outside to realize that maybe I'm not the only one dealing with garbage in my life, right? So the pain to propane was powerful. And it's interesting. I'll let you talk about the process of this one, and then I want to tell you about the results, what happened after.
And I think, again, there's lesson plans, so everything is step by step. We have it in alignment with SEL standards in Illinois, since that was the first state to adopt SEL standards. And just to give a little context, again, we think trauma-informed is super duper important, right? But from our experience, working with young people in inner city LA and Chicago, who've had more than 4 ACEs, right? What we've seen is putting these young people in an environment where they're safe, where they can develop some critical consciousness, where they can find their passion and serve. If we treat them not as an object to be changed, but we treat them like an agent of change, these are actually the most powerful assets that we have in our schools and our communities. These young people are amazing agents of change. One way I frame it is they're not problems to be fixed, they're solutions to be released, right? And so we're pushing this notion with the field, and we're doing this in the research, that trauma-informed is important, but it's not a complete movement, right? So we're pushing this idea of trauma-transformed. So trauma-informed really emphasizes taking a clinical view of young people. And what we're pushing is taking a critically conscious view of institutions and systems that can create and sometimes perpetuate trauma, right? Trauma-informed is about helping people to cope, and that's great, but we know that there's space and a possibility for young people to heal. Trauma-informed poses this notion that you're a victim and that you can cope and you can survive through that trauma, which is a good first step. But trauma-transformed, we posit the notion that, you can not only survive, you can thrive, and you can be an agent of change that can change systems that create the trauma. So pain to propane is a lesson that begins this process of post-traumatic growth. So it starts out with some discussion, inviting young people, to be powerful, to be courageous. If they're willing to lean into the things that have caused emotional distress, that's a real sign of power. And most adults, are not doing this. There's $1 billion of industries that are trying to keep us from facing our pain. We go into a whole poem about fire, how it can be used for construction and destruction, and how emotional pain and trauma is like a fire, can be used for either one. We invite the young people to then look at the different sparks in their lives. These are looking at the different ACEs of their lives. And for a lot of young people, they've never done this kind of self-examination, realizing like, okay, yeah, when my parents got divorced, wow, that was tough. When I lost someone close to me, man, that was, wow, okay, right? And then we invite them to take one of the sparks and to be a journalist, to ask the who, what, when, where, and why, to be a third-party observer and to write out, what's happening. And then we put them back in the situation. What emotions come up, right? And then we get them to do this activity, which is very, very powerful, where we encourage the young people to imagine that their future grandson or granddaughter has unfortunately just experienced the same trauma or the same emotionally distressing experience. And so they're going to write a letter that we're going to send to the future that they're going to get at a very critical moment in their lives. And so they're tapping into all the love and wisdom they can. They're writing these letters and this, they're getting into it. And then we ask them the question, have you ever been in a situation where you gave somebody advice, about a relationship or something, and it was pretty good? And a lot of kids like, yeah, I'm giving some good advice. And then we say, have you ever been in a situation where you needed advice and you're trying to give yourself advice and you can't come up with anything? Everybody's like, yep, So we said, well, the letter's not complete. We have them scratch out dear grandson, dear granddaughter, and we have them write their name. And we tell them that the universe has been conspiring to give them this letter. We have them read the letter, and oftentimes tears flow. New insight is derived. New meaning is gained from this painful experience. And then we, if we have time, challenge them to say, look, this pain is like a fire in your life, and you can use it to grow, to thrive, to change the climate of the world. How are you going to let your light shine? And some of the poems and some of the ideas that come up in this one session can change the trajectory and the climate of a classroom, a school forever. I know we did this in Wyoming at Pathfinders. Elisa, what was your experience with this?
Holy cows, so our kids, they're scared to be vulnerable, right? They're scared to step out of their comfort zone. But if we're sharing with our kids or grandkids and we're talking about pain, we can do that. And then when it turned around to them, it really soaked their hearts. Like, it really just took them by charge. Our kids kept those letters. Like, I had one last week that pulled out their letter, and I'm like, what does it say? Like, that I can do this, that it's going to be okay. And I'm like, we need to reread that because you're going to be okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But they're keeping it. It's so meaningful. It's so personal. It's so reflective on our kids.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, just to reiterate, you know, the relationship and, you know, the ability to connect where young people are, you know, doing some deep reflection to do this journaling and to start to believe that they could, you know, grow from that painful experience, and connecting that with service projects is a powerful combination going on. I noticed that we only have about 11 minutes left. So Barb, what do you think if we open it up for some Q&A?
I think it'd be great. Yeah, I think we'd love to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling? What are your questions? How can we help you to really make a difference at your school? What do you need from us? What questions do you have?
So if anybody has questions, you want to put them in the chat box, go right ahead.
Yeah, put them in the chat box. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yep.
You know, we would love to see your face too. And, you know, we are doing social emotional learning. So, I mean, you know.
Absolutely. I thought, if it's okay, while people are thinking of questions, I have this little video I want to share. It's a happy video. Let me get back to it. Yeah. All right.
We're not seeing your screen, Barb.
Barb, did you share your screen?
Oh, you're not seeing it?
No, you have to share the screen again.
Oh, goodness. I didn't think I took it off. All right.
All right. So while you're doing that, I'm going to answer this question. Fulfill the Dream has been used from kindergarten through 12th grade. I just presented at Boost, the best out-of-school time conference in the world, largest after-school conference in the world. And we've had a lot of success with Fulfill the Dream in out-of-school time. The YMCA in Cincinnati implemented throughout the entire city, and they were named the top after-school association in the nation. Fulfill the Dream, I think, really is best when it's kind of used in a multi-tiered system of support, particularly for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 youth. It's been used in entire classes as a class, but it's also been phenomenal in some of the small group work. So it's very adaptive in that way. Unlike some of the other courses in the portal, Fulfill the Dreams in alignment with Common Core standards. So it has been taught as a creative writing class, social studies class, because everything is tied to the history and the case study of hip hop culture. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking.
Roberto, Fulfill the Dream, grade levels, please.
Yes, so Fulfill the Dream, what's currently in the portal is mainly middle school and high school, and we're working on digitalizing it. We have printed books for elementary school. We just haven't brought those into the portal quite yet. So with print and digital together, K through 12 is covered.
And to be clear, 7 Mindsets is, Fulfill the Dream is part of 7 Mindsets. And so the elementary curriculum is culturally relevant as well. So you can have the resources now, it's just not the hip hop flair. Yeah.
And it's kind of neat, you know, I'm a hip hop educator, and I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And, you know, when we do the research, we know that a majority of young people consuming hip hop is young folks in rural and suburban America, you know.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Other questions?
Can I throw a few out here?
Yes.
So for staff training, if they decide to use these programs, is the training, I noticed you've got some portals online, but is that the primary training for staff, or does it require one of your trainers coming? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning is that our experience has shown us that for maximum impact and most effective implementation, it's wonderful to have an on-site training if you can find a half a day in your schedule. To do that, it is so worthwhile because it helps to facilitate the teacher buy-in. It gets the teachers excited. But fortunately, our digital resources are so easy to understand. It doesn't really require more than 15 minutes to show you how to use the portal. And there are online resources that they can use to educate themselves on what the mindsets are, what the importance of social emotional learning. There's tools built into the portal to help folks to build an implementation type of structure and plan. However, I would highly recommend, if you can, we have coaches that every school will get a personalized coach assigned to them, and our coaches will work with you side by side to make sure that there is a structure to your implementation, that we understand your needs and what you're trying to accomplish, because every school is different. All the needs are different. Teachers are different at every school. So we partner with you to really make sure that the way that you roll it out will be successful over time. So to answer your question, I would highly recommend, if you can do on-site training and partner with us in that way, it will be the simplest thing you've ever done. But really, the portal itself is easy to use, and you can train yourself and get started on it tomorrow if you want to.
So when schools are looking to do this and as an online portal, so do you have it set up so that they purchase multiple site licenses? Is it based on that sort of pricing? And then is there different pricing that comes in for staff to go out and do training?
Yep. So we have multiple packages that we put together, and we really are kind of a customized approach. So we tend to look at the school itself or the district and find out what's best for them. You can start as easy as just getting the curriculum, and we sell it by site license, which is typically by building. So all teachers have access to the curriculum. All teachers in the building have access, and to teach it in their classrooms, or to use the resource hub or the parent resource, to use everything that we have in there. And we sell it out as a building license. And then we have select programs. We call them select programs. And that's where you will get a lot of extra things thrown in. So we'll do the needs analysis, which is based on surveys, leadership interviews, school assessments, and we'll come in and devise a personalized, written out, implementation plan for your building. You'll get an on-site day, 1 to 3 on-site days. Some of the packages come with more intense things, so that's an option as well. And then you can buy individual professional development half days or full days, kind of on an ad hoc basis. So there are those programs available as well. Yeah. So it really can be customized to what your needs are and your budget and your time frame. We don't want anyone to be left behind and not be able to do social emotional learning in some capacity. So we really try to work with schools to help them to find a way to bring something
back a little bit too. Is we're also offering for the first time, it's going to be SEL and equity trainings as part of this package. So there's a lot of different trainings, as Barb just indicated, to meet everyone's needs. And whether you're coming in with a low budget or a high budget, we can meet your needs for sure. Any other questions?
Great. Can I leave you with a happy video? Do we have a minute left?
Yeah, you got 3
minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't stop sharing it, but I don't know why I went. All right, here we go.
So just one thing before you start, Barb. If people have questions, do feel free to post them. And if you want to contact any of us after, you're welcome to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put my email too, in case folks have more specific questions around research, cultural relevance, equity, any of that. I'm also going to share the link. I just released a white paper talking about systemic implementation of SEL and equity, kind of bridging the gap between research and practice. So I'm going to leave that as a resource for y'all as well.
And I put it in the chat box, but just a shout out, Roberto's joining us for our summer symposium.
Yes.
And breakout speakers. So you'll get to face to face.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Awesome, Roberto.
This little video right here that you're going to see is the way that we hope all of you feel after using 7 mindsets.
You got to share the screen again, Barb.
How did it cut out? It keeps cutting me out.
Technology, can't live with it, can't live without it.
Yeah, I haven't shut it off, but I don't know. I just don't know if it was meant to see this video. So see, it shows that I'm sharing. Oh, well. Okay, let's try it again.
Now we see it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the way that we'd love for you to feel after using 7 mindsets. This is how we come to work every day. Here we go.
Look, I can be a shark. Now my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my moms. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone.
Yeah. So whether you're 2 years old, 20 years old, 65 years old, we want you to have that feeling. And we're hoping that through our resources and curriculum and professional development that we can bring that to the students, to the staff, to your personal lives. Please let us know how we can help. You can reach out to me. I can get you in touch with Roberto if you're wanting to get in touch with him and don't have his. If you want to talk to Elisa, she's been so gracious to offer her time, and we've got a ton of references. We can find one that fits within, kind of your demographic and get you to talk to any of our customers as well. So would love to help in any way we can. And thanks so much for participating today.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. And
Thanks
you
for
everyone
joining us.
coming in during lunch. We appreciate y'all, and look forward to being in contact.
Thanks, everybody. Make sure that if you have questions, you follow up. Everybody here is willing to assist you. We will put the recorded version of this webinar online as soon as we're able. And thank you again for joining us on this webinar. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.